We are live. Welcome to another episode of LearnBiz The Podcast. I am Lisa K.
And I'm Sandy B.
All right. And we are the home of the Black entrepreneur. And we're here today to talk about a little topic that's been circulating the news wave, Sandy. It's about DL and Mo'Nique. And the name of this is Who Got the Contract?
So in essence, we've been listening to a little bit of back and forth in my mind unnecessarily, because when I really think about when contracts exist, there's really no back and forth necessary unless contracts are lacking, right?
Right.
So that was my first thought when I heard this story. I was kind of like, why are we hearing this story? Because based on what came out, it was a contract that was had between each individual and the promoters. It wasn't a contract that they had with each other. They are individual comics with their own, representations. And if there's a dispute, it would make sense that there would be a conversation with either their attorneys or the person that they actually contracted with. So I was a bit thrown aback. Like, what did you think initially when you heard this story?
Well, what I think is that not everything needs to be aired out in social media.
You think?
That's what I think most of all. And especially, like you said, since it's not a court case or some public matter between those two, they definitely can go in the background and see if they can work those kinks out. I just don't think everything needs to come into the public purview. Now, whether what effect it has on their brands, I guess we've yet to discuss that, or will it impact either one negatively? I'm not sure, but I just don't think everything needs to be out there. Mo'Nique, she looks like a person that is always complaining about stuff to me. And I think that's the problem with putting everything out there in the public. It looks like you can get along with no one. And so, how good is that for you in business when you got to think about dealing with people and entering into future contracts? Do people even want to be bothered because they think a bunch of problems are going to follow, from dealing with you, the individual?
Well, I mean, I'm particularly kind of thrown because of the fact that we've had a lot of things happen when it comes to Mo'Nique for some time now. Um, and I feel like for some time I was kind of on her side. I felt like, she had a voice and she wanted to express something that was going on with her. But there's a time where you have to kind of carry forward with what you're actually doing. If you're a comic, you need to focus on your comedy. If you're an actress, you need to focus on, if you're like Mo'Nique, where you have a couple of different balls in different areas, you got to start focusing on your craft and allow, your lawyers and your people to deal with the business in some sense. But
Yeah.
I feel like for some time now, we've been hearing a lot about what's happened to Mo'Nique. And I think she's said plenty about what's happened to her. And many of us maybe even feel that she was in the right in some ways, in terms of some of the things that happened to her. But there are also those that look at her and see, all right, you have a problem here, you have a problem there, you have a problem over here. There are going to be some that are just going to say, okay, you're just a problem. You're the common denominator. So it's unfortunate because if she has a valid argument in all fronts, right? If she has a
Hmm.
valid argument about what happened to her previously, if she has a valid argument of what's happening to her currently, it's being drowned out by the sounds of, Mo'Nique, you're a problem. Mo'Nique, you're the issue. You're the common force. When
Hmm.
I listened to her commentary on this situation and I listened to DL's commentary on this situation, I have to say that I feel a little bit swayed. Not that I am a DL supporter or a Mo'Nique supporter. I really don't care for either one. They're
Hmm.
not really people that I crazily follow. But I do respect their craft as comedians, and I think that they're two great comedians in the industry. And even other comedians that have spoken on this have said, they are, both pretty good comedians in the industry. But this situation is disheartening because what's come out is being dragged into the social media space in a way that I don't really think is helping the situation. Like, it's not really a productive piece of the conversation.
Right.
So in listening to DL's side, he's basically saying, look, if you have a contract and I have a contract and there's an issue, then we need to talk to the people that there's an issue with. He's saying, I don't have an issue. You're the
That's
one with the issue.
mature. That's
So
the
you should
mature way to go. Yeah.
you're the one with the issue. You should address it with who you have the issue with. And, one of the things that came out with the contract was, Mo'Nique presented something that was, the agreement that she signed, which to my understanding is an agreement that she created with her team. And then DL presented something that was some kind of a deal memo. I'm not sure if that actually is standing as his contract or not. But he's saying, look, this is the conditions upon which I was going to do this show, period. So if both of them are saying these are the conditions upon which we were going to do this show, doesn't that sound like there should be a promoter intervention in this situation to say, this is what we signed them each up to do? Because I feel like that's the voice that's missing in this. Like, if you're in the right, Mo'Nique, shouldn't the promoter come out and speak on your behalf? If you're in the right, DL, shouldn't the promoter come out and speak on your behalf? Or is the promoter like, I don't have no time for this. This don't got nothing to do with me.
Right. And I mean, I kind of see it as the two artists making offers to appear under certain conditions. So they're offering to appear based on maybe on a certain price, and maybe one of the conditions is that I headline the show or something like that, however that flows.
Right.
So, but, and you're right though. So you're submitting those offers. Someone has to accept on certain terms, and you cannot accept two simultaneous offers that are agreeing to the exact same things, because that's going to be a conflict. So there's an issue somewhere, but I think you just pinpointed it, Sandy. It sounds like the issue lies with the promoter not really laying out whose offer they're accepting and under what terms. Sounds like it.
So, in terms of talking about contracts now, let's talk about it. When we have a contract with somebody, we're identifying what it is that we're willing to do. They're identifying what it is that they're willing to do. And there should be some consideration or an amount or some form of value that is exchanged in order for us to come to an agreement. So, without some money exchange, without some signatures on a document that says this is what we've agreed to, or if it's a verbal agreement, this is what we agreed to, and here's the exchange of money to prove it. The question comes down to who got the contract, right? Is what Mo'Nique presented the contract? And if so, if it is the contract, is her gripe with DL, or is it with the promoter that she signed the contract with? Contracts 101 would say your issue is with the promoter. Now, if you have a personal gripe, different story. I don't know that they had a gripe with one another until this particular point in time. And so even if that was the case, there are ways to handle this. And I think the unfortunate thing to me is I don't feel like this was handled properly by both sides. I do understand Mo'Nique's need to respond to the situation, whatever her basis is. Maybe it's something that she felt that she had to do. The problem is people paid to come see you perform. They didn't pay to come hear about whatever issue you were having with somebody. And, that's just not the audience's perspective, right? They're here to hear you tell them some jokes. Yeah, so if you're not here to tell the jokes,
yes.
Yeah. We don't need to hear about your issue with DL.
Right. Do what you do best. Yeah. Do what you do best. And that's what she needs to do that, and keep her personal business and contract disputes in the background, because that's not what she's really branded for. Although people love to hear about it. Come on now. It's all over the YouTube space and everywhere. So people love talking about other people's business. And if you give them something to talk about, they will talk.
The problem, though, is branding wise, do we feel like this is a positive benefit to Mo'Nique's business?
I do not. I do not, because like I said, I've heard of other situations where Mo'Nique has been in some type of dispute or another with some other celebrity type a time or two before. Right. She's had certain kind of issues like that. And I just think, there's a such thing as being typecast in your industry. And, if people choose not to deal with you because your reputation precedes you, right, that could be a problem with your branding or your image. And that's the thing I'm just concerned about with her. I don't think
Right.
it hurts DL as much because he hasn't had those issues in the past.
Right.
But with her, I think she has to be a little bit careful about that.
Now, in looking at the DL side of this, I believe Mo'Nique insinuated in some of the things that she was saying that somehow he had something to do with the fact that she believed she was to be the headliner that night. And somehow when she got there, she was no longer the headliner. DL was now the headliner. And the way that she spoke of it was as if, somehow he said, well, I'm not going on unless I'm the headliner, even though she, according to her, was supposed to be the headliner. Now, when I listen to comedians talk about this, some of them are like, look, you getting paid to perform, do your thing. Who cares who's the headliner? Others are like, there's some defined things about if I'm the headliner, I'm the headliner. I'm probably getting paid more to be the headliner. So therefore, it kind of matters in the grand scheme of things. You want to be the last thing that people hear. But in a situation where there is like this, a conflict before the show happens, what do you do?
Yeah,
Do
the
you
show before the show, right?
do you stick with the show before the show? Or do you say, you know what, I'm a comedian, here's what I'm here to do? That's where I kind of have a bit of a gripe. And when I look at DL's conversation about this, he's like, look, I heard him say something on his social media page where he was like, something about she showed up late. I
Oh
guess she was
boy.
trying to change the order by showing up late. It's like, that's the thing. And in essence, when the promoters didn't go for it, she went on and did, what she did. She basically went on and on about the situation, questioned his his sexual orientation or sexuality. She made some comments about him having his legs or feet under her table and all this stuff. Like she just went down a whole rabbit hole of things. And I'm like, but that sounds
Like Mo'Nique.
personal, right? I mean, I won't say it sounds like Mo'Nique because, over the years when I've watched Mo'Nique, I don't remember ever getting a gist of an issue. I think with her last situation is where I started to hear there was a problem, but I don't feel like there's two sides to my thoughts about Mo'Nique. I do feel like there was some funny business in that whole situation. The problem is, I think her response to it kind of lit more flame than actually doused the situation. So I
Right.
feel like maybe if she had somebody who was going to really speak on her behalf to address the issue legally and in other realms, it might have been received better by the general population. But instead, everything that she's done in response to her previous issues is now seeming as if she's just griping. And the problem that I have with that is, she could very well have merit in her statements. I know that she had a lawsuit and she had some other things going on. So she could very well have merit in her statement. The problem is the way that you deal with issues. And that's why we're talking about this topic today. When you have a dispute and a contract is involved, the way that you deal with that matters.
It
Because
does.
if you have paperwork, these words that are being spit out into the social media space are not necessary. However,
Right.
let's look at from the DL perspective. She has flamed him up. The wording that she said is all over social media. What does he naturally have to do? I would say, yeah, he has to respond. I don't know necessarily that I would want to go through all the lengths that he's gone back and forth with her, because I think the paperwork should speak for itself. But if there's some lack in the paperwork, which seems to be the possible issue here, then that makes sense. But with DL, he's trying to protect his brand in some sense, because it's like she's saying certain things that, according to him, are not true. So what does somebody who's a social media personality do, which he is now?
I think you're right. You have to answer that question. What do you do in a case like that? If someone is attacking you out there on social media, and even though that's not your thing to hey, I see Doug checking in with us. Hey,
Hey, we
Doug.
got to check in with Doug. What's up, Doug?
Doug, we definitely need your comment on this one. But I just feel that, sometimes you are forced to have to say something publicly. If someone takes it there with
Yeah.
you, you're going to have to deal with it somehow. But I choose tact over just brawling any day of the week.
Yeah, I don't really how all of this is playing out. And I really feel like there's just some layers to this that don't make any sense. I could actually, I almost want to pull up her comment and then pull up his comment so that we can see what they both said. But definitely want anybody's feedback. If if you watch the replay of this, or if you're tuning in and you want to make a comment about this, we're talking Mo'Nique versus D.L. Hughley. Who got the contract? I mean, they're both representative of businesses, right? They're both comedians. They get paid to do what they do. I'm sure they're dealing with contracts all the time as they do comedy shows, because many of these comedians who've been in the industry, I believe they both have been in the industry more than 30 years. DL, I want to say longer than Mo'Nique. So it's like, well, who got the contract?
They definitely know contracts. They both understand contracts. They've negotiated terms. I'm sure they're very familiar with that. And whether it was a mistake or not, or a fast one, let's say that DL may have pulled, does Mo'Nique go up there? Because she talk about it. She's a comedian. She could go up there. She could mess him up within her comedy situation by just talking about folks, stepping out of their lane. I mean, she could do that, but do it in such a comedic way that folks would end up just laughing about it rather than, getting upset.
Yeah, I mean, there was so much that came out. I don't really feel like she did herself a good service in the way that she presented the information. Let's see what Doug has to say. I don't understand what was her issue with DL initially, when she should have been taking her issue to the promoters. And you know what's funny, Doug? DL says that she took it to the promoters, and they were like, you either go on or keep it moving. Like, they're not stalling for her. Let's see, Nathaniel Crawford. Hey, Nate, what's up?
Hey, how are you?
Mo'Nique's brand is now more about confrontation than comedy. And D.L. Hughley commented on this. He said, yeah, you say you were a queen of comedy, but I really feel like you're a queen of ashes, because you lit that stage ablaze with your, I forgot the wording that he used, but he was just like, you just used that for such a moment to really spread like your venom. Yeah. Vitriol, that was the word that he used. He was like, you used it to spread your vitriol, and it's just like, what for? Like, what was the reason for that? And how did we even get here to begin with? Because there's just no reason to go through all of these lengths. If you are right, if you in fact are right, like you say, then shouldn't you be able to just sit in that? Shouldn't you be able to sit in that? If you are in fact right, then there should be no reason for us to go through all of these lengths. But the fact that you are says a lot about the situation. And I'm actually going to pull up a couple of things. I hate that DL did this one thing. I didn't like when he brought up this whole Precious situation, because he was taking his jab, and I can't be mad at him. It's kind of like somebody is stabbing you, and what choice do you have, in a sense? Like you're just trying to respond in the best way that you can. So, let's share a little bit about this situation here. Let's talk about Mo'Nique's part here and D.L. Hughley's part. So D.L. Hughley says, all you have to do is check the order of names on the ticket stub from last night, and you'll see who's confused. Against my better judgment, over the objections of my team, and 4 other occasions where I said no, I decided to take a chance and work with Mo'Nique. Then he goes down the long list. I hate when he does this part. He's talking about Oprah and Tyler Perry and Charlemagne and Lee Dan, all these people, Steve Harvey. And he's like, now it's my turn. At some point, it can't be everyone else. It's you. Lesson learned. I didn't have anything personal against Mo'Nique. People paid a lot of money to laugh, not hear about your contract. Apparently, the role you played in Precious turned out to be an autobiography. I wonder who's next. And, during her bit, she tries to question his, I guess, sexuality by saying, your initials are DL. What does that, it's kind of like, what does that mean?
Oh, man.
So he signs Daryl Lynn Hughley onto this. And so when he did this, Mo'Nique went and responded. I don't know why Mo'Nique had to go in this direction too, but they had to go back and forth with each other for quite a bit. And I really hated this. The fact that you point the people to the ticket stubs for the order of the names versus to your contract implies that you don't have a contract. That shows you are the headliner. Like I do. Either show your contract or be quiet. Stop messing with people who have never messed with you and who once considered you a comrade in comedy. So the question comes down for me is kind of like, well, she's saying stop messing with people, but I'm like, but didn't she bring him into this conversation? If she doesn't have a contract with him directly, why did she bring him into the fold? Because she felt he did something to her personally.
Right.
Which, if it's personal, why are you bringing it to the stage? That's where I was kind of like, I don't like this. Then she says, stop messing with people who have never messed with you and who once considered you a comrade in comedy. But I think you, DL, because you're the reason why I fight for my people. And I hate when she does this too, because this don't got nothing to do with nobody else, right? Because you're the reason why I fight for my people like I do. Anytime you opened for the Kings of Comedy and I was the headliner for the Queens of Comedy, and you think you should close the show over me is a prime example of the bias that Black women have to deal with in this business. I won't even discuss awards. So you see, they're going kind of like this tit for tat. And I'm just like, eventually there is something that looks like a contract produced. I don't necessarily know whether this is the actual contract for this event or not. I know that she produces something that looks fully to cover all of this situation. So let's look at this here. She has something that looks like a contract. But on this agreement, it basically has an agreement between Hicks Media Inc. And it has her name, Mo'Nique Hicks, and it has her, known as Mo'Nique. And then it has New Day Entertainment. So the talent is Hicks Media, or better yet, Mo'Nique. The purchaser of this talent is New Day Entertainment. So already here, we have a contract between Mo'Nique and New Day Entertainment. Where does DL come in here? I'm a bit confused. And this is why I don't really like how this was approached by, the two sides, right? Then it talks about the engagement, right? It talks about some other details that they kind of blank out. There's, she sends a copy of an email that shows like the run of show and all the details. But again, all of this looks like we're dealing with New Day. Now, she shows a schedule here that basically shows Mo'Nique as the headliner. But the problem is, if you were in fact the headliner and that didn't happen, then doesn't it mean that we have a problem with the person that you contracted with, right?
Because question. Yes. And why would she have felt obligated to go on at all? Because in fact, if the promoter had already breached the contract, there was nothing more. There was nothing for her to do. There was no performance for her if the contract had been breached, right?
Correct. If the language of the contract specifically said that she would only perform as the headliner and that she was performing, like if it had the specific wording, then in fact, she didn't have a reason to go on, right? She could, if they were already in breach, then technically she wouldn't have an obligation to go on.
Exactly.
But instead of saying, hey, I'm not going to go on, what did she do?
She went on. Which means she probably questioned some aspect of that contract as far as whether or not she had an obligation to perform or not. She didn't sound like she must have known herself at that point.
And Doug is right. DL actually did present his paperwork first. Mo'Nique presented hers in response, right? So in essence, when DL presented his information, and I'm going to go to that real quick. When DL presented his information, he was like, look, this is, Mo'Nique can show you whatever she want to show you, but, this is what I have. And hold on, he didn't go to this part. He went to some other, hold on, I'm getting a little wrapped up here. He showed some kind of agreement that he had in terms of I guess it's called the deal memo. So this is what it looks like here. So he has a deal memo, and on this deal memo, it basically says, what DL Hughley agreed to, and all of those, terms and conditions.
Wait a minute, but that's more in the form of a letter of intent or an agreement to agree. That is not an actual contract.
And you are right about that. However, here's the problem. One of the attorneys that was analyzing this situation and talking about how comedians do business started talking about the terms in an industry, right? The way that the dealings in the industry occur. And a lot of times these deal memos would be involved in this conversation when we start talking about the contract, because why would D.L. Hughley perform under conditions that were against what he actually negotiated with them? So it's a question of, did they consider this deal memo the contract, right? Were there some signatures? Was there some other things done that established for D.L. Hughley that these were the conditions upon which he was going to perform?
But Sandy, you know, and I know that, these documents that lead up to an actual contract, they do give an indication of what the intent of the parties are in terms of the contract fulfillment or coming to the terms.
Absolutely.
However, you also know that the only thing that you can read for the actual agreement is the contract. Like all that other stuff at the end of the day, really, it's not the contract.
True.
And so you see in a lot of contract language that any other document outside of the four walls of this contract
Right.
has nothing to do with this. If it's not in this agreement, it doesn't exist.
Right. Hey, Rigo, thank you so much for joining us, guys. We're talking
Hey,
about
Rigo.
Mo'Nique versus D.L. Hughley. Who got the contract? Now, Lisa and I are talking about some important things when it comes to contract terms, right? If we have this dispute presented in a court of law, for example, they're going to look at the terms of the contract in terms of the four corners of the document. But please understand that whenever you're in any industry, there are some common practices in the industry that also tend to be followed. And in this instance, let's say, for example, DL only has this deal memo, right? And Mo'Nique only has the contract that she set up. We still have the contract parties are DL and New Age, Mo'Nique and New Age. In no way, shape, or form is there an arrangement between Mo'Nique and DL. So therefore, any kind of notion that would say, well, DL did this, therefore, that's why I ended up not being the headliner, would be just her word versus his word. And at the same token, if that were the case, like you just said a few moments ago, Lisa, that means New Age would have been in violation of the contract. They would have breached the contract with Mo'Nique, and she would have had every right to say, oh, I'm not doing the work then.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely, absolutely. So there's something going on there, but the only reason I can think of, and you may have already spoken to this, that I can think of as to why Mo'Nique is coming at DL is that she feels like in the background of this, he did something underhanded, or maybe he said something to someone to maybe get something switched up in the 11th hour that benefited him over her. It sounds like she thinks he did some underhanded stuff in the background.
And as I was looking through some of the stuff that both Mo'Nique and DL indicated, DL says that his contract says he was the headliner. He is the highest paid artist on this particular show. It says artist to have approval of lineup, and lineup of the show, DL Hughley closing. Now, I don't know that he provided like an imagery or anything of, the contract that he references. All I know is, they both have kind of gone back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it's so funny because, you would have expected a little bit different from each one of them.
I would expect DL to produce his contract. You know what I
True.
mean? If she's going to produce, you're going to produce a memo. She then produces her contract. The best evidence to counter her is your own contract.
Now, I will say, if I was representing DL, you wouldn't be presenting anything on this screen. Because first of all, you have no business going back and forth with anybody on social media about nothing.
Then there's
So,
that.
I think that's one of the challenging things for me is that this information is coming out on social media. But in addition to that, is you have two people going against each other. Now, Mo'Nique initiated this dispute because we would have never known anything without Mo'Nique saying anything on the stage. We wouldn't have known anything, right? Which we shouldn't know anything. This is not our business.
Right.
But because she's put that out there, DL in turn responded, then she responded, then he responded. And in all honesty, if either one of us were representing both parties, we would be like, get your behind off the social media and please stop with your nonsense, because if you got a contract, we're dealing with the contract.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. We don't need to deal with any other issues or factors. We don't need to go back and forth with each other, because at the end of all days, there is a contract. Now, let's talk about how these contracts would be handled if we had to present this to a court of law, right? The contract terms matter.
Yeah.
But at times, the circumstances surrounding the contract will be infused into the conversation. Yeah. Because again, each side is going to present their evidence. Each side is going to provide their witnesses. But in all, I don't see a scenario where DL is involved in this contract issue.
At least not with her.
Absolutely not with, well, actually not with anybody, because here's the thing. If DL goes on stage based upon his terms and conditions with this company,
mm-hmm.
he did what he had to do. He's done. He got his pay. He's done. If Mo'Nique has an issue, the issue should have no bearing on DL, aside from a personal one, which is if DL did this, if you're saying he did something backhanded, then you have a personal issue with him.
Right.
But you didn't have a contract with him where there should be this back and forth dispute, because at the end of all days, you don't have any legal bearing against him unless, hey, let's go back to these defamation cases, unless somehow he said something maybe defamatory about you to the promoters, but you would have to prove that too.
But then even with that, Sandy, I think the question is, should she get up on stage, even if it's a personal beef? Kind of like, like remember Chris Rock and Will Smith, that right there in that moment was a personal kind of beef between those guys, right? Something in public, but it was personal. So if she has a personal beef, should she like go and approach him in the background, or should she get up on stage and let everybody know how freaking underhanded she feels he really is?
Well, let's make it one worse. According to DL, she did not speak to him at all. So I'm even more confused now, because it's like, if you believe that a comic that you hold, in your words, you held him to a regard as, I guess, a friend in a sense.
Used to, yeah.
Wouldn't you say something to him?
Well,
that's a little off to me that you wouldn't say anything to him.
Wait, you just get on social media and do your thing publicly or on a stage, but you don't actually go to that individual? Not
only do you get on social media, but you do this as part of your show.
Yeah, I think that's some stuff.
Like I'm really at a loss, and I just there's only so much that someone can do in this type of situation, and I always think of it as, why would you put this information out in the way that you did without actually saying anything at all to the person that you feel did something to you?
I don't like it. It's like, I don't like what it sends as a message. Like, I'm really trying to hurt you. I really don't need to talk with you, because for real, I'm not really trying to work out anything with you. But if I can hurt your brand and bring you down some in my methods, then mission accomplished. And that sounds a little dirty if that's what it sounds like, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know about this, and I think and Doug says, because she is messy. That's what it comes down to. She is messy, so it doesn't really, there's no rhyme, reason, or logic behind it. It's just unfortunate. I really feel like there could have been some different ways to approach this situation, and at the bare minimum, if this is somebody that is a colleague of yours, I would say at the bare minimum, shouldn't there have at least been a conversation?
I think so. I mean, it's a precious situation.
So let's see some wording from D.L. Hughley. So D.L. Hughley had a whole bunch. D.L. Hughley had a whole bunch to say, And, it's beautiful in some ways because back in the day, you would have to hear words from news outlets and other sources. But in this instance, we get to hear information directly from the sources. So it's always interesting. So let's see what DL says here. Let me make my little screen bigger and play this. Come on, DL, get to the point.
All right, that was the lead talk. I worked very hard for the photo environment to work with me. I only work where I want to work and who I want to work with.
Can we do anything with the volume?
Let's see. I'm as high as we can get.
Okay.
To work with Mo'Nique in LA, in Brooklyn.
Oh no, I was wrong.
Houston, and I turned them down because I didn't think it would work. So after talking to a lot of people, and one of the very people in this room about how things are different, two of the very people in this room, as a matter of fact, and how things are different, and look at how things are coming around, I decided it would be wrong for me not to give somebody a chance based on things that they'd never done to me.
So already you're seeing DL is laying up the storyline like, bruh, I was not going to work with your behind. And I took a chance knowing all that I know. But now look what you done did.
Look what you done did. Look
that
what
been wrong.
You done did.
And when she goes on her diatribe and she talks about me having my feet under her table. That was at her invitation. I was doing a gig in Greenbelt, Maryland. She lived in Baltimore. She was having a fight party. It was, I think, Evander Holyfield and Mike Tyson. And sure enough, I came to her table at her invitation. It was a wonderful time. As a matter of fact, it was based on that interaction, along with talking to people, I decided that I would do these gigs. I decided I would do it. And now I know what Tyler Perry knows. I know.
I hate when he says this. I really do, because it's so petty 3000. But
no, it's not. It's not petty.
Doug said it right, because she is messy.
Wait, big people have said stuff. Tyler Perry done said stuff. Who else? What? Go ahead, DL. Who else?
I know what Oprah knows. I know
what
Oprah knows.
Yeah. Steve Harvey.
God knows. I know what Netflix knows.
Netflix.
Saying yes to Mo'Nique is an occupational hazard.
Oh.
Now, we go to we're playing a gig in.
Why he had to say? We got to keep it. This is fair use. I hope nobody's trying to ting us on this one. He said working with her is an occupational hazard. He said it at least 2 or 3 times in this video.
You might end up getting sued or something dealing with her.
I'm so bad at DL for this one, but it's not, you can't. The beauty is he has his own show. So you could spit whatever you want on other social media stuff. He has his own show. He's broadcasting. You think he's not going to say something about this? Oh, he's absolutely going to say something. He's going to be like, who got the contract?
And who's got the last word?
This weekend, I know I'm going on at 9:45. I leave the hotel.
So you hear that? He says he's going on at 9:45.
Headliner.
That's the only. If he's getting there at that time, obviously, if he got there and they told him no, you're supposed to be here already. So I don't know. He's saying he got there at 9:45.
It's not like he got there at 9:45. Like, well, I'm sorry, DL, you're supposed to be on at 8, buddy. You're out. It's not like that happened. So somebody knew he was the headliner. Somebody other than Mo'Nique already knew that.
And Doug added, when he's mentioning all these people's names, again, when we ever see that there's conflicts and there's one person that's the common denominator, it's really a great point. It really, really weighs heavy on a situation when you are always the one being named. So let's see what else he says.
9, Mo'Nique had just gotten there. She's supposed to be there at 8:40. She had just gotten there, gone at 8:40. She got there at 8:38. What Mo'Nique was trying to do was to slow walk the show. She didn't end up getting on for 30 minutes. The oldest trick in the world is, if I want to change the order and I don't have merit, I'll try to make people wait so long that everybody gets nervous and go, please just go on so we can avoid a conflict.
Now, here's where the contract dispute issue comes up. If Mo'Nique's contract in fact says she's the headliner, she's to go on at a certain time, then we would have to kind of look at some things, right? Because if, let's say this all came up to a court of law where we're disputing whether or not this business versus this business was supposed to be the headliner. Her contract would have said, what time she's supposed to show up. Same with DL. His paperwork would have said what time he's supposed to show up, or at least this deal memo that they talk about is supposed to iron out who's supposed to show up at what time. Now she shows up at 8:30, but he mentioned that something about 9:45, right? Didn't he say something about 9?
Yeah, I think she showed up at 8:38, and wasn't she supposed to be finished by 8:40 or something? I don't know.
No, I think she was supposed to go on at 8:40,
Okay,
something about that, because he would be going on at 9:45.
Okay.
So I guess it's a 30-minute show or something
Okay.
like that. Each of them has 30 minutes.
That didn't happen. Mo'Nique got on stage. Mo'Nique actually felt like she had merit. She would have done one of three things. Either she would have took it up with the promoter, and she did, and the promoter said, we're going on, and whether you're going or not, that's a different thing.
Did you hear that?
We're going on. We're going on.
She took it up with the promoter, and the promoter's not, nah, bruh, you got to go. We don't care about what you're talking about. So, sounds convincing.
Not done it, but she knew she had to get on stage, or she would be in breach of contract.
Watch out there. Wait, Sandy, stop the presses. Stop the presses. He just said if she did not go on that stage when she did, she would have been in breach of contract. So the question becomes, was Mo'Nique trying to pull a fast stunt by showing up late, trying to throw the order irrespective of what the contract says?
Yeah, I'd be interested to see if any more documents come out. As we said, we saw a deal memo from D.L, but does he have a contract? But again, if I'm in my right, why I need to show y'all the contract? That's what I'm wondering. I don't know what DL's thought process is about this, or whether or not he just threw the deal memo out just to kind of give us a tidbit, because I know if he's my client, I'm not telling him to show anything, because that's not my problem.
I understand it, but did Mo'Nique's contract actually show the time that she was supposed to go on?
I mean, I'll try to see if I can pull it up and we can look at it again.
Yeah, I don't think I saw anything about the time.
I emphatically emphasize she didn't ever, and I emphatically emphasize this. She never once talked to me. I haven't seen Mo'Nique in years. I didn't see her at the venue before, after, or during. I haven't spoken or seen Mo'Nique. So if you really thought that you had a legitimate contract dispute, you would have come to me and said, hey, I have this contract and you have this contract. Notice not one thing on that contract, not one person she has on that contract, not one thing happened. Do you know why? Because it wasn't legitimate. And she goes on stage and she proceeds to eviscerate me.
Yeah, she eviscerated. I can't even play what she was saying. So Doug says he had to respond. She threw him under the bus. So he
had no choice. He had no choice.
He had to say something. I don't really think he needed to show any documents, but I mean, I guess it's helpful in the social media space. But I do notice that he didn't show his contract, and I wouldn't ask him to either. To me, I don't think he has any obligation to show a darn thing, aside from if he wants to at least speak up for himself and address the issue. But I don't think he has to present anything, because he don't have a contract with her.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, the thing that's very interesting, if the promoter had a problem with him, they let him go on. So apparently they didn't have a problem with the things that were scheduled. So there was some meeting of the minds, maybe not with Mo'Nique, but certainly with D.L.
Not just me, but Steve Harvey, the sexual, my wife, my dog, later on in subsequent conversation. Let me ask you something. What did any of that have to do with an alleged contract dispute? What did Steve Harvey have to do with your contract? What did I have to do with your contract? What did my dog have to do with your contract? What does my wife have to do with your contract? You wrote your contract, you and your daddy. You proceeded to say
why DL had to add her daddy.
Why he got her daddy? Maybe if you had got a lawyer, a real lawyer, but you got your daddy. And that's where your problem. Wait, I'm not gonna say that. Keep going.
I ain't touching it.
Things that were so patently insulting that it was galling. It was galling. You ask in subsequent conversations why I have a dog, a support dog. What kind of person has a support dog? I have that dog because my father died. My children and family decided they would get a dog from where he was from, and I named the dog after my father. I don't have a dog to keep people away from me. I have a dog, so I have my father with me all the time. That is an act of love, which you know very little about.
Woo! I feel some emotions creeping up in this.
Why, Mo'Nique? Why?
You proceeded to assault my sexuality. You have the temerity to assault someone's sexuality, a man's sexuality, given who you lay next to.
Oops.
Oh. What? Wait a second.
DL just went slicing in this one. Like he really.
Well, who does she lay next to?
Her husband, her daddy. Okay. Lisa, please don't make me go on this. They're gonna kick us off YouTube.
None of that had anything to do with alleged contract dispute. You could have taken that up with a lawyer. You would have gotten out. You could have not gone on stage, but you knew you didn't have a valid contract, and you do what you always have done. You tried to weaponize Black femininity. You tried to turn that audience against me. You tried to burn everything down.
Like weaponize Black femininity. Weaponize Black femininity. You know what? I think she stands accused correctly of that. I do. Because she turned this into like a coming against Black women kind of thing. Like, Black women, stand up, be represented. Nah, Mo'Nique, you wrong. That's what I have to. You wrong, Mo'Nique. As far as that, this is not a Black woman issue against D.L. Hughley, or a Black woman issue against making contracts with a promoter. You know what I mean? You probably needed that lawyer that he just mentioned to be with you to make sure all your terms were copacetic, if you will. But no, it's not a Black woman's issue. And I don't appreciate that mischaracterization.
Yeah, Doug says, allegedly Mo'Nique allows her husband to sleep around. I mean, I know I've heard a lot of different stories about, their relationship and the issues and things like that. But it's just like, I hate to see us doing this.
We don't need to do that. But I'm just saying, like, I cannot fault DL under these circumstances. If she got up on that stage and made references to his sexuality, it had nothing to do with any of this. His dog, why they have a dog, mentioning his wife. Come on, Mo'Nique, that's not comedy. That's not comedy.
Well, Doug's still hearing us here right now. Let's see if we can make it through this. Good Lord.
Thinks I can get $10 million because I did the Queens of Comedy. Who thinks you can get on stage and still live off that? I was a king of comedy. You never hear me talking about it, because in this business, like any other, it isn't what you have done, it's what you do. That show was one I signed on to do. I made the quintessential mistake, the horrible mistake that, like Tyler Perry, like Lee Daniels, like Oprah, like all these people, of saying yes to you. And it is an occupational hazard.
I hate that he keeps repeating occupational hazard. Oh, Jesus, please help us.
It is my fault. I have learned my lesson. You didn't just, and the thing that bothers me the most isn't the things that you said, because I know who I am and I know what I do, and I have a pristine reputation. Everybody who knows me know what I'm about. It's this whole, my dear, my babies, I love you for real, which is so transparently false. It is ridiculous.
D.L. Hughley,
I think he should feel vindicated and exonerated in some sense from this. And I feel he's like emotional. But it's because it's like he's coming from a place of caring about, why would someone do this? And he's just laying it out there. I think he don't have a choice. I think he doesn't really have a choice.
So, we can't go without a DL video without going to Mo'Nique and her video.
Well, we're fair and balanced. We are fair and balanced here, I will have to say.
Let's see what Mo'Nique has to say to her babies.
Hello.
My babies.
My babies.
How's everyone doing?
We all right.
We're going to give it a few seconds, so for as many that can come into the live can make their way in. And for the ones that's coming in, we want to say thank you and welcome.
Lord have mercy.
Welcome to us. Daddy, we ain't done this in so long.
Not Daddy.
We ain't done this in a good long time.
Let me try to move forward a little bit.
How are you going to deal with it? And I hope that DL makes his way in.
Let's see what she's talking about.
With love. Let it be lovely. All those things. Y'all come on in, my babies. We want the ones, like I said, that get it. And we really want the ones that don't get it. The comedians, the journalists.
So what I'm already... I don't want to listen to this, because what I've loved about Mo'Nique over time is that she's generally just, got into her, storyline, whatever. And right now she's doing is, I feel like she's pandering. And I don't need her to pander, because when DL says what he said, I need you to get on here and just boom, tell us what you got to say, because then that'll tell me, maybe you both have experienced two different things. And then you might want to apologize for the way that you responded. Maybe not what you said. Maybe you meant what you said. I don't know. But apologize for what you did in terms of taking away from your show. You could have did your show and just moved on.
Let's give her one more chance. We're gonna try. We'll give her a little more space into it. Let's see if she straightens up.
Let me woosah my moment here.
Come on, Mo'Nique, get to it.
In. So we can have an open and honest conversation, and then, y'all may answer some things for yourself and ask yourself, how would you have handled the situation? How are you going to deal with it?
Not the way that you did, ma'am, on that stage.
And I hope that DL makes his way into the live.
Ma'am, why didn't you speak to DL at the darn show? Why you need him to come into the live?
But did she actually ever say anything here?
I don't know. I didn't get to watch this. Let's see.
The baby, come on in.
Can you move it much farther into it?
Let me see if she starts.
The contract situation.
Oh, here we go. Contract. Okay.
And I had a show at the Fox Theater on Saturday night in Detroit. And y'all have seen a video gone viral with me speaking very openly and candidly about my feelings towards D.L. Hughley, the contract, and the past. And as I was on that stage saying what I was saying, let me be clear. It was intentional. It was intentional. The contract situation and the headliner situation, that was just the icing on the cake for D.L. Hughley and I.
Let's take them back, though.
Take them back.
Let's take them back to the beginning so everybody can get.
So doesn't this sound like that she had a personal issue with D.L. Hughley?
Yes.
Before this even came along?
Like it's bigger than the contract.
But if that's the case, then why would you do a show with D.L. Hughley?
I don't know.
Doesn't this let's think about let's break down contract issue here. Let's talk for just one brief second. If your issue is about a contract only, D.L. Hughley, first of all, shouldn't even be involved in your conversation. Now, if he did something shady, that's one thing. But if you feel like he's done something shady in the past, why would you do a show with him now in the present?
Maybe she was giving him a chance like he was giving her a chance.
Lisa, I like you. I like how we do the yin and we give everybody an opportunity here. So let's see. Let me see what Rigo says. Rigo says she has been in trouble since she was blacklisted and she pissed off a lot of people. That is true. I mean, she did piss off a lot of people. She lets her husband run around and he has an open pass to do what he wants and she does what she wants. And she has an issue with anyone that don't kiss her booty. That's why she was blacklisted. Rigo, tell us how you really feel, sir. Tell us how you really feel. All right, let's see if she says something that makes us feel. So, I don't know, Lisa. I don't know.
Understanding of where the love fest, if you will, ended.
Let me turn it up, Daddy. They saying turn it up.
All right.
Okay. So let me just take y'all back to where, when you think you're cool with somebody, you find out that you're not. Some time ago, when D.L. Hughley, he still has his radio show, and they called me to do an interview. I go on to do the interview, and I'm getting interviewed by the Sister Jasmine, and I can't remember the other gentlemen that were in the room. It was one of his producers, and it was another gentleman on the radio. And please forgive me, I can't remember their names. So we're having a great time doing this interview. Well, when we get to the end of the interview, the Sister Jasmine says, "Hey, Mo'Nique, would you like to play a game?"
Okay, Lisa.
This is pointless. It's pointless. It's not explaining why she was late for her show. It's not explaining why she felt like she was the headliner. It's not explaining why her contract was preemptive of his in some way. It's not going to the meat or heart of the issue. I consider this to be blah 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 blah.
Like I'm really curious as to what the objective. I mean, this video is like an hour long, so we're definitely not going to go through it.
Yeah.
But when you think about addressing an issue, DL just got to the point. I mean, he did tell a couple of anecdotes in there, but anecdotes based on what she actually said on stage. What I'd like to hear from her, and maybe she says it in this, but I mean, these first few moments are not going well. We're already 3 minutes in, and she's still talking about anecdotes. So we're gonna try to listen to this a little brief bit more. Let's see.
And Daddy ain't helping right now. But
Daddy is on he's over here pumping it up.
And I said, okay, sis, let's play the game. Well, when she said the game is called Would You Rather? So I said, okay, I'm down for it. And then the sister says to me, would you rather your husband sleeps with Lee Daniels?
Okay, I'm done. No. Let me scroll forward and see if maybe she gets to some kind of point.
Okay.
Here, because this is going.
I'd like to give her a little bit more of a chance because she's so far it's a bunch of.
Because regardless of the beef, that's still our brother.
Come on.
But had Brother DL simply said, I apologize, that offended you?
Okay, so they're talking about some past stuff. Let's keep it moving. Let's see what else is here.
That y'all don't know about this human being sitting to the right. When she says it, she really means it. She had the privilege of being told by a gentleman y'all may have heard of, who said, never stop being who you are.
I agree. And who I am is someone who's scrolling forward because I'm going to move on. Let's see.
Implementation, hence the performance agreement that
Wait, what's that?
Looks like here in about 30 minutes in, they might have gotten to some conversation here. Let's see
what's up.
Hearing the truth because they are afraid it will destroy their illusion. We don't want nobody to take away our God. And we got to be connected more, not to who the celebrity is, not more to who's black, not more to who's white, not more to who's a Democrat, not more to who's a Republican.
Irrelevant.
And I'm going to break it down in layman's terms.
Okay, he's breaking it down.
Say, unlike contracts, however, a memorandum of understanding, which is what DL provided the community with, is not intended to be a legally binding agreement. By legally binding, that means that if you were to try to sue for...
He's right about that.
But let's ask ourselves a question, Lisa. There is no contract between Mo'Nique and D.L. Hughley. So we don't really care what's in D.L.'s contract, aside from the fact of this headliner situation.
You're right.
And based on the fact that he was the headliner in terms of his performance,
right?
If there's a gripe, it's not with DL.
It's still not with DL. You're absolutely right. No matter, irrespective of any of that, you're absolutely right. It still goes back to the promoter, right?
Whoever she contracted with.
Whoever she contracted with said, look, you can either be in or you can be out, but we're going on with this show as planned. It sounds like that's what they're saying to her.
It had, I mean, if it's not that, here's the problem I have. DL performed. You performed before DL.
It's over.
If they breach the contract, you have a viable claim against these people.
Right. So why
are we talking about DL? Now, if DL stabbed you in the back, let's just address that. Why did you go through all this contract stuff?
Well, why isn't she on YouTube talking about the breach of contract between her and the promoter? Why is she spending her time wasting her breath on YouTube? Why? Because he has his own talk show and can maybe out-talk her? But it's pointless. It's pointless. And so I again, man, I'm telling you, I would be like concerned about doing business with Mo'Nique. I would be concerned because Mo'Nique, it seems like a lot of is also following her. It's going to be some drama somewhere with Mo'Nique, and people who like to do business transparently
Yeah.
and don't like a bunch of BS all mixed up in it, they're not going to want to be bothered with her because she's slowing down the economic wheels of getting stuff done. We got to keep revisiting issues and dealing with stuff that should have been
Yeah.
over with a week ago. Come on, Mo'Nique.
Now,
Let's stay progressive.
let's keep our disclaimer up now. Lisa and I don't care about Mo'Nique, D.L, or the dog. We don't care about none of this, right?
Or
The
they
point
daddy.
of this, or daddy. The point of this conversation is to say this: Mo'Nique versus D.L. Who got the contract? And if there's a contract and there's a breach of the contract, then there's something that's actionable. The contract will say whether or not they can sue, whether they have to go through arbitration,
Right.
you know, whether or
right.
not there's some other terms and conditions.
Right.
If in terms of her issue with DL, you know, unless DL said something that, you know, again, we've been talking about defamation with all this Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, unless there was a defamation issue, unless DL did something that, like she said, prevented her from being the headliner and caused them to make a change, then sue him for that. If
Right.
you have a basis, right? You have to have
Right.
a basis for what you're trying to do. So that would be the thing that I would say. Rigo says they need attention because no agency or agent wants to deal with her. So they are dropping names, but they have issues that all they are saying is, wow, wow. And then he says they each have a contract, but whomever was the promoter of the show should have had both contracts. I'm curious to see if the promoter of this show will come forward and say anything, because honestly, to me, the common denominator is whoever they both contracted with. Who paid these people? That's the person that there should be a gripe against. Now, Mo'Nique, by saying a few things that she said on this so far, is indicating she had a previous issue with DL. And for whatever reason, either that issue was never resolved or was not resolved to her liking. So that means she came into this show with all of those things in mind. So this contract dispute wasn't the only thing that would have tricked her off in terms of, creating a reason for her to use DL as part of her bit. She already had things in mind. So this coming along, that was just all she needed.
Yeah, but that whole down low and all that
That's too much.
that's so low. That is so even as a comedian under these circumstances, that's way low. That's real low. Too low.
Let's see if we can listen to a couple more minutes and then we're just going to do some wrapping here.
It was not on a memorandum of understanding. There are no signatures. It is not legally binding. And the agreement, because he made the statement, oh, that came from his company. Well, the MOU came from UTA, which, as it says here, unlike contracts, however, a memorandum of understanding is not intended to be a legally binding agreement.
However, if they wrote that up and for whatever reason they signed that paper and there was money exchanged, guess what's going to be presented as a contract?
That's
if that's all they have, and there are some signatures to that document, or even if there aren't any, trust and believe, when it comes to court actions, they're going to use whatever. Because I remember in law school, didn't we learn about that case where the lady wrote on a napkin? And it was the simplest contract ever. She wrote on the napkin, they exchanged the money, and that was it.
Yeah.
Or whatever goods. I don't even think they exchanged money. I think it was whatever goods. You know, I agree to do this, you agree to do that, signed on a napkin. And I think only she signed. The person who created the contract signed. I don't even think the other person signed, because this person was offering something to the other person. Person accepted it. It was good to go.
It might have been a unilateral contract, was it?
It reminded me of something like that.
I remember one scenario in a law school scenario on contracts, like, if you cross this bridge, I'll give you $50. And the person never came, the person that was considering crossing the bridge never came back to the person and said, hey, I agree to cross the bridge. I'm going to do it. They just went across the bridge. And then they came to the person and said, look, I crossed that bridge. You put out this notice that whoever crossed the bridge, you're going to give them $50. I crossed it. I have proof. Give me the $50. That was held to be binding because you just put that offer out there to the world, and whoever fulfilled it, now you created a contract.
Yeah. I mean, a contract is an exchange, right?
Yeah.
One person is doing something or not doing something. The other person is doing or not doing something. They're exchanging something of value. It may not even be dollars and cents. It could be goods. It could be services. It could be taking actions or not taking certain actions. So,
but to get back to your point, Sandy, about that memorandum of understanding being used as a binding document, a contract has three parts. It has offer,
right,
it has acceptance,
right,
and there has to be consideration.
Yeah.
So if those three things are shown within that MOU, you're right. That may become legally binding and enforceable.
It could. And especially if it's a dealing in the trade, if it's a common practice in their trade to even do business that way. Let's say D.L. proves that, you know, this is how he's always done business, for example. He's always gotten this, and then he does the work, and then he gets paid. If that's the common dealing with this particular company or in his industry, that can be held up to be, you know, what is utilized in that situation. So, yeah. I mean, I understand what they're trying to do, but honestly, they can let go all this stuff. Get to the point.
Let it go, Mo'Nique.
She said, let it go, Mo'Nique.
Let it go, Mo'Nique.
Typically avoid the agreement with no legal consequences. However, that brings you to what Mo'Nique presented you with, which was a legal binding agreement. See, one of the key differences between a memorandum of understanding and a legal contract is enforceability. That means the key difference between a contract and a memorandum of understanding is enforceability. Contracts are created when two or more parties intend to create a legally enforceable agreement. Parties into contracts after an offer has been accepted with considerations. Parties to contracts are legally obligated to comply with the terms and conditions of the agreement.
Is he adding that parties to contracts are the only persons that should be involved if there is a breach in the contract, and you should not be adding a third party to the situation unless you have a basis to include that third party and that there was some obligation between that third party and you?
Yeah, namely, you're talking about D.L. again, but I want to know, is he going to talk about Mo'Nique's contract? Now he's resuscitating legal definition, and that's all good. That's cool. That you understand that, but talk about what Mo'Nique has.
Now let's see if he gets to that point. Let me skip around.
You're fighting against a sister that's saying, I earned that position as headliner.
We done with the headliner conversation. Let's get to the what did your stuff have to do with? Like, what did happen that night? Can we get there?
Let me go up on stage and give this woman an apology. I want my friend back because I know. And if y'all listen to what he said afterwards, it's very important. He said, I got caught up essentially in the hoopla until I realized what was important. And it took an individual who had enough nuts, literally and figuratively, from the trans community named T.S. Madison.
Oh, God. Let me scroll forward.
He's calling me all of these slick things, brother. That's what you said. And now you tender. Now you're trying to trick our community. So when you're talking about I turn people against you, no, D.L., you do a fine, mighty job of that yourself.
Okay. I will see if any other people have actual clips from what was actually said about what we're actually talking about. I can't.
But Sandy, it doesn't even matter. You went through that whole tape, and there was no spot that you could find where she talked about exactly what she had and why she should have been in a headline. She did.
We just slid. We're at 45 minutes in. We've scrolled past as much as we could, and still we didn't even get to. Maybe it's in there somewhere, but no. I would have thought that most of this would have been a conversation about, you know, what I appreciate with DL, whether he's right, wrong, or indifferent. What I appreciate about DL is he got to the point, he did that sucker in 7 minutes and he was done. This is an hour-long video. I don't know if she gets to the point of the issue.
And for her, that's perfect because she doesn't really want you to know that she never gets to it, in my opinion, because she should have led with that. She should have led with that.
Okay, so Doug says she has been messy ever since her husband became her manager. And then he was referring to Lee Daniels. Oh, I guess he was talking about the situation that they were mentioning in this video. I can't take no more.
Yeah, I can't either. I just
So let's do some wrap up here. From the legal perspective, there are so many ways that you can take action against somebody. I mean, we are probably one of the most litigious societies here in the United States. I don't know if other countries take lawsuits as seriously as we do. Thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of lawsuits are filed in different jurisdictions every single day across the US, some of which may not even see the light of day, but you have the right and opportunity to sue, particularly if you have certain documentation in line to prove your case. Because at the end of the day, in order to present a issue when it comes to a breach of contract, the core issue is going to be, is there a contract?
Yeah.
And like we just said in this particular situation, we're going to be talking about the contract between Mo'Nique and whoever paid her.
Yeah. D.L.
So
didn't
she
pay
is
her.
talent that was hired by a company.
Right.
And the relationship between her and that company is what's at issue here. Now, if she's insinuating that a third party, namely D.L. Hughley, had some influence in this situation, again, where is the documentation and proof? You're saying there was a swap. Because she showed a document where it showed she was the headliner, and then on the night of the show, she's saying it said something different. So if that's the case, you have that document. You have the document from the night of. There's some evidence, right?
That's evidence.
The second thing is you had a conversation with the promoters. I don't know what produced of that, if there were any witnesses or whatever. You have that. The other thing is, if you're saying DL is the reason, then the question begs to differ whether or not there was some clause in the contract that allowed the promoter or the company to make a change in the terms. Because what I do notice at a lot of these shows, I don't know if you've ever gone to like Jazz in the Gardens or Essence Fest or all of these other things, they typically have the right within their terms and conditions to make a change to the lineup. So here's my question. If the headliner thing was a make or break, then maybe she would have some additional argument there. But what if there were some terms and conditions of this agreement that say the lineup is subject to change?
I've seen things like that with certain concerts and stuff like that. So
Right.
Did you ever see where this thing was promoted and whether or not it was promoted publicly with DL as the headline? Did you ever see that?
I'm going to be real honest with you. There was some stuff that I was able to find, but the problem is the way that they have DL listed and the way that they have Mo'Nique listed, it's really hard to know which one actually should have been the headliner because it lists it. So I'm going to give you an example. Here's an image that I saw. Let me see if I can pull this up. This is an image that I saw that has basically DL on one part of the image, and then it has Mo'Nique on the other part of the image. So here we go. And the weird part is, it's like, I mean, can you really say one is headliner over the other? Are they doing the show together? I don't know, because the 105.9 station, the way that they listed it, it doesn't really give me.
Yeah, you can't really tell who's the headliner. It has his name first, but still that doesn't necessarily say who's the headliner.
Yeah, and then even when I was looking at some of this information, it didn't really give me an understanding of whether or not there was a particular order, because at one point I saw it listing starring D.L. Hughley, Mo'Nique in that order. So it had D.L. Hughley's name and then it had Mo'Nique's name. But then it's just like, okay, well, it has their names, but does it necessarily mean one is kind of taking the show over the other? Because, you know, I have seen how they mention things on these types of shows. And they don't really specify. You don't know until you show up the night of who is going to be the headliner per se. But, you know, some of the comedians that have made comment on this have basically said, you know, it really doesn't matter. I mean, you're getting paid to perform in a show. So let's take a look here. Let me stop this one and let me show you this screen. You know, this is just a lot, and it's unfortunate that we have to go to these lengths. So here's something that I found on the website, right? For Kiss FM Detroit, comedy explosion with D.L. Hughley and Mo'Nique. Now, does this mean D.L. Hughley and Mo'Nique as headliner? It doesn't really tell me. It's kind of like these are two comedy greats. If I were to assume, based on what I'm hearing about D.L. Hughley, I believe he's been in comedy longer than Mo'Nique. I think. Obviously we can pull up and see, but I think that he's been in business longer than her. And it's like Kiss FM, Kiss 105.9 Kiss FM will present the comedy explosion starring D.L. Hughley and Mo'Nique. But it doesn't say D.L. Hughley then Mo'Nique. Like, I don't know what it should.
If I
was looking at this image, look at this image. Who would you think would be the headliner by looking at this image?
Definitely DL, because of the larger image of him, and she looks like kind of on the side,
Well, in my mind, because of the writing, I feel like they both would be doing something together in some way. Like, it's just weird the way that this was done.
If I look at the writing, it's still D.L. Hughley. If you look at the font of his name, it looks more serious. And if you look at the font of her name, it still looks like, it looks more playful, and it looks like an aside. So he still looks like the weight. Yeah. He looks like the weight of the entertainment, and she looks like someone who's a part of it, but she doesn't look like the big piece of it to me. But you know how, if I were Mo'Nique, I would have probably played this off like, in my marketing, it would have looked like we're both headlining. I mean, I would have never said I'm headlining versus him, but it's like, hey, we got two huge comedians. I'm one of them. DL's the other. Come check us out. And I would have kept it rolling like that and never, ever let it get this kind of attention. She didn't have to go there.
I think she may have very well had some great points in her situation, but I really think that this whole thing was taken in a way that it didn't need to go. So,
right, she could have worked that. She could have finessed that a lot better than what she did. She could have really finessed that, because she was up there. If people really couldn't tell who's headlining, some people, it looks like they're both up there at the top. And I would have worked it just like that, right? I see what Doug is saying. It's all about a personal grudge against DL. She has much said that. So she already had beef with him. She probably already planned to dog him out on stage no matter what. And it might have been a situation that if you are late to your performance, that you are not allowed to headline. How about that? I don't know,
but I definitely agree with Doug. This was all about a personal grudge, because in all that she said, even when she was speaking on stage, there was a comedian that commented that, I see anger, I see frustration, I see hurt and pain. That's what I see when I'm looking at Mo'Nique talking about this whole situation on the stage during her comedy bit. Like, her piece was basically, I don't even know if she said anything beyond talking about the contract dispute. I don't.
Which means she didn't give people what they paid for. She didn't give them what they paid for. That's just like folks that got mad at Chris Rock because the day after the week after he got slapped, he had a comedy show, and there were people who went specifically to his show just to hear what he was going to say about Will Smith. Right. And he was like, well, I actually had a whole comedy stint prepared here that had nothing to do with Will Smith. Imagine that.
Look, I got slapped into infinity. I'm not about to be talking about the slap. I'm about to get this money without the slap now. Come on.
Exactly. So whatever beef she had, she should have left it right there and just moved about the place. And I think she could have really mastered that moment. And you know what? She would probably won some friends back, like Tyler Perry, Oprah, Lee Daniels, Netflix, and whoever else she done pissed off.
I would have rather her approach DL. And I wouldn't even say before the show, I would have rather her reach out to DL, have a conversation with DL, even approach him after the show, let him finish his bit. You all can have a conversation. imagine how much better that conversation could have been. Because right now, ain't no conversation. That I'm gonna tell you that right now. The stuff that she said on that stage, however she may feel about him, that was not, in my opinion. Again, I'm not team Mo'Nique. I'm not team DL. I'm team logic. I'm team reasoned mind. I'm team civility wins. There is a time and place for all things to be spread.
Yeah.
And when you spread your personal information into this space, you leave things open for all of this stuff that's produced.
Yeah.
And now look what's happened. We talking about this, Lisa.
Can you imagine? You're giving us.
We talking
content.
about this.
We have show content for days. Thank you, Mo'Nique. Geez. Yeah, you really do. You leave a lot of people just with the ability to talk about your circumstances.
Yeah.
And look at this. I don't believe this is going to be favorable for Mo'Nique. And look and see what gigs she gets within the next 12 months. Just let's all just be mindful and see who deals in business with Mo'Nique following this episode.
Well, I think she got a gig, if I'm not mistaken, with 50 Cent. So we'll see how that goes. Because I remember 50 Cent was talking about getting Mo'Nique back on track. Not to say that she hasn't had a few little things in between, but the Mo'Nique that we remember from, Queens of Comedy and the Parkers and, the movie Precious and, all of these different things she's done, I always thought Mo'Nique was cool. She had the talk show. She used to do a lot of these little appearances here and there on other shows. I didn't think of her early on as somebody that I'd be like, oh, come on, Mo'Nique, why are you doing this now?
Yeah, well, I really do I think Precious Mama is really how Mo'Nique is in life. I really do.
No, you're not with Team DL. No. Okay, so guys, all in all, we always love to bring really important issues. And when I look at comedians and others who are in the creative space, one important thing is understanding that, they are entrepreneurs. They often are represented by their own business interests, whether they're working through some kind of agency or whatnot, but they are the brand. They are the face of their brand. They are the face of their business. And regardless of what entities they are shielded by, they have a business to uphold. And when things come against their business, there are a lot of issues that need to be handled. Like, do you have an attorney to address contract disputes? Do you have an attorney to prepare your contracts? Do you have, a public relations type person who's going to speak on your behalf when things arise? What type of branding risk management do you have in place when things blow up like this, right? Because what Mo'Nique said on that stage should never have happened. There should have been a conversation with her before she got on that stage. And maybe there was. And she was just like, forget y'all. I'm about to say whatever I want to say. At the same token, even after that happened, there should have been some kind of measures taken to really do a cleanup of that situation. There should have been an apology to her fans primarily, but an apology to DL to say, look, you know what? I have an issue. I want to express my issue. What I said on stage didn't need to be said. I want to talk to you one-on-one. I would have appreciated that more. And even with DL, I'm like, DL, I know you had to respond, but you ain't had to throw the little pebbles in there as you were trying to do your response. I'm like, you don't need to do that, because a lot of times when people are doing things out of hurt, you don't do yourself any justice in trying to bend over to be what they want you to be. You don't have to do what they're doing, because that's not you. Now, then again, DL be doing some stuff. She should be in BMF. What is BMF? You're gonna have to tell me what that means.
Oh boy. Do we want to know?
I don't know if we want to know. Doug's gonna have to tell us. But I mean, there just has to be a level, in any community. I like to say our community, because we're focused on Black entrepreneurs here. This is the home of the Black entrepreneur. That's what we focus on. I'd like to know that with us in business, just like we talked about the Will Smith slap, we talked a little bit about the Amber Heard and Johnny Depp. We're trying to bring these current events to light from a business perspective, because many of us as small businesses deal with some of these issues, whether it's somebody posting a negative review, somebody saying negatively something about your business out in public, somebody posting negative information about your business, even you having a dispute in public that maybe is recorded and then, of course, blasted all over the internet. There's so many things that come up And, you know, I get that there are things that have to be responded to. And I definitely agree that DL had to respond. It's just, this just doesn't look good, man. It's just really bad.
For some reason, I just don't have a problem with how he responds. I just don't. You know, I just don't.
All right, undercover. You know, I kind of agreed with DL in his presentation, because I just felt like what he was doing was attacking what was said, and you know that I get it. I just think for both of them, you know, you all are from the queens and kings of comedy era. Why?
Right. No,
and I don't blame,
right.
and I can't blame DL. DL is being responsive to him being
attacked.
attacked.
Yeah.
Now, he said 50 Cent stars series Black Mafia Family. Oh boy.
Oh
so
my
he
God.
said she should be in Black Mafia Family. I mean, I guess if we're saying that she played the Precious role really well, she definitely will do great justice to this. And, you know, maybe if she focuses on this instead of focusing on these issues, you know, maybe that'll be a great thing, and we'll get to see some different things from Mo'Nique. I'm just praying that there is some betterment coming out of this. I think these are examples that we as business owners, as entrepreneurs, need to look to as examples of what potentially can happen. So if you are somebody going into the comedy industry, you have to know that there may be some issues with lineup. There may be some issues with contracts. There may be some issues with the money. And you want to make sure that you line up the right professionals to support you through these processes, because when things go wrong, what are you going to do? You're going to blast on social media, or you're going to have somebody to represent your actual interests.
And don't sue the wrong people.
Yeah. Because
if Mo'Nique had filed a lawsuit against DL, yeah, that would have been all wrong. So the thing is why are you blasting? You can't sue him, so why are you blasting him?
Yeah, I don't see the purpose aside from a personal issue. And she made that clear in this video that we were watching. I mean, I'll pop the links in the description when we're done with this today, and you'll see for yourself. And then I'll see if I can pull the link of what she actually said on stage, because we couldn't play it here. I mean, there were a little too many expletives in her stand-up. Oh man, she cussed them real good. But nonetheless,
we're back on here tomorrow, aren't we?
We're back on here tomorrow, and we're going to talk a little bit about are we talking about the verdict?
We're going to talk some about the verdict. Very interesting. Since we had a conversation on that, so we thought we'd talk about the conclusion of that case. And then I think we were going to talk in general, like how to protect your business out there in that public space.
Yeah.
I think we're going to continue to talk about that, because there are, we have to talk about how we as entrepreneurs, we don't have the name recognition as the Mo'Nique or D.L. Hughley, right. But even smaller businesses can get hurt out there if somebody's putting out bad reviews and things like that on them. So we need to talk about how we would respond to things like that too, as businesses.
Absolutely. So guys, we always appreciate you sitting in and listening in. If you catch the replay, please let us know your thoughts on this Mo'Nique versus D.L. Hughley. Who got the contract? It is Sandy B and Lisa K. Crawford with LearnBiz The Podcast. We hope that you will tune in again with us tomorrow. We're coming on here, I think around noon, or is it 1 o'clock?
Yeah, sometime in that time frame.
All right, we're coming on here now.
Yeah. Let me look it up.
Yeah, take a look and see what time we're coming on. And just want to let you guys know, we have a couple of things coming out. We have our Entrepreneur Mindset Tactical Planner coming out soon. We're doing some finishing touches and trying to get that ready for you. It's going to be a great resource for you as an entrepreneur to organize yourself and make sure that you have some of the basics of your business in place before you really start to put yourself out there, or if you're already in business, to organize your information. We have some merch coming out. We finally put the touches on our t-shirt design. So we're going to be doing that and coming out with a couple of other things, all in the interest of supporting our channel and allowing us to continue to grow and bring you great content. So we definitely look forward to speaking with you again. And again, don't forget, the Entrepreneur Mindset Summit is still up. You can catch a lot of great gems about business formation, copyright, trademark, social media, branding, health and wellness, accounting and bookkeeping. All of that was included in the summit. It's a 2-hour summit. Check that out. And as always, we appreciate our supporter, Doug, for tuning into the stream.
Thank you, Doug.
And look forward to sharing with you again. And thanks, Rigo, for tuning in as well.
Yes, thank you, Rigo. And Sandy, I think we're on in the morning. I don't have the actual time here, but I know it's the morning. So,
okay. Yeah. All right. So we'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a great day, guys.
Thank you.